everyone, welcome back to First Things First. This is our experiment in virtual mentorship for incoming first-gen students. My name is Anita Casavantes, and I am an associate professor of Chicano Latino Studies and History, and a proud first-gen former student myself, first woman in my family to finish high school, and now a faculty member here at UCI, and I'm with Gretta Osuna. And Gretta and I have been talking over the past quarter about her experiences during her first quarter as a first-gen university student at UCI. So I want to first of all just say, yay, you've made it through your first quarter.
Almost.
Yeah, I know, exams are still coming, right? And so for all of you who are still in the middle of exams, I know it does not feel like you are done, but you are almost there. So hang on, you're almost done. Greta, so here we are, like almost at the end of the quarter. I wanted to ask you to kind of like think back in your mind to the week before you started your first quarter as a university student. Greta in September, right? And tell me what's different since then. How do you feel differently about university than you did before you started the quarter?
Well, to begin with, I feel like it's definitely been an experience completely in every aspect of it, because of course, like the workload is different and just like the atmosphere. I have never done like homeschooling or anything along those lines. And so it's definitely been something different, kind of learning on your own, even though there's people and computers and we're talking and everything, it's still on your own. You're still in the same office, you're still in the same place. So I believe that's been one of like the hardest things, at least for me, because I consider myself a bit of a social person. I like to go out and like talk. And so it's felt a bit different. But putting that aside, I believe that UCI has given me a lot of resources to like still make me feel connected to people, and that I still feel that I took advantage of a lot of things this quarter. And I also learned a lot about myself and what I like to do to prepare myself for classes, what I don't like to do, but I have to do anyways, and sort of things like that. So I feel like my greatest achievement, so to say, this quarter is just kind of adjusting. I feel like I could have done better in classes if I knew certain things like office hours and stuff like that. But now that I know, I hope that I can do better during the winter quarter.
Great. I mean, adjusting is a major achievement. It's funny because sometimes we think that achievements are just like, ooh, I got an A on a paper, or, you know, I won a scholarship. Sometimes a major achievement is simply surviving, right? Anyone who survived this quarter, okay, yay, that's huge. But surviving the quarter and also learning to adjust, taking away new bits of information that will help you be more successful next quarter, that's a massive achievement. You mentioned that you learned about office hours. What did you learn for those people who are watching that maybe haven't figured this out? What have you learned about office hours that's important?
I learned that you don't have to have a question, or you don't have to know that you have a question to go. Because I used to think that you would only go if you were confused about something, or if you had like a specific question about maybe the professor or the class in general. But I found myself just going and just kind of dropping in and listening, and I kind of realized that I had the same question as someone else, but I didn't know. Or maybe the professor just giving out extra information that he or she didn't have enough time to go over in class, or someone else has a question and just kind of like reinforces the information that you already had. And yeah, I think those are the major things that I didn't know about office hours.
And that's so important. I actually didn't figure out what office hours even were until I was in my third year of my undergrad. So you're way ahead of me. For those of you who are watching, I just want to emphasize Greta's point, go to office hours. It's not a place that you go because you're a weak student. In fact, from a faculty perspective, the students who come to office hours are the strongest students. They're the most motivated, the most curious, and those are the ones that we form relationships with. Those are the ones we give the extra help to. Those are the ones who 2-3 years from now, when they're applying for scholarships, for research positions, for grad school, and they ask us for letters, we're like, oh yeah, I can write for Gretta. I've known her for 4 years. I can say all of these things about her, right? So building those relationships with faculty starting now is so important. What's the hardest thing that you have experienced this quarter? And let's be like super real here. Positivity has its place, but so does authenticity, right? What's been the hardest thing for you this quarter?
I think this week has been the hardest week. At first, I had a lot of time to kind of learn everything at my own pace, but right now I kind of have to have it all together and just review it. And at the same time, I've been working a lot more hours on my job, which has taken time away from my studies. And so I feel like balancing those things out has been the hardest things. Kind of just having time to do everything and having the energy to do everything as well. And I feel like this past 2 or 3 weeks have been feeling like it's the end, but it hasn't ended. Like I feel like I'm so close, but I'm still not there yet. And so I feel like that's been like the hardest thing, because at first I was really motivated and everything just seemed like, oh, I have all this stuff, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that, and I had like my whole schedule planned out. But at this point, I just want to get it over with.
Mm-hmm.
And so I believe keeping myself with the same energy has been the hardest thing, especially this week.
So true. And you know what? Welcome to the next 4 years of your life at UCI. The quarter's like that every time. And it's like that for us faculty as well. You start out, you feel like all optimistic and in control and organized. Then by week 4, you're like, oh, I'm really in it. And then all of a sudden it's like week 7 and you're like, oh my God, where's the quarter going? And then by week 8, you're exhausted and you want it to be over, but you've got, 2 really crucial weeks and exams to go. And then by the time you're just, it's done and you're just crushed, right? And then you breathe, you pick yourself back up and you start it all over again. The quarter system is very intense. I guess the advantage is you get to have many more varieties of courses than you do in a semester system. The semester can also feel like a really long slog sometimes, but yeah, the quarter's intense. And just faith and wisdom, girl, like just knowing, yes, this is the intense point and I'm going to get through it and I will continue getting through it, and it will be stressful every time and I'll get through it every time, right?
Also, I feel like it's really reassuring to feel this is the worst as it's going to get, because
Yes.
it's the last week. So that's kind of what I've been relying on right now.
Absolutely. So after having been through your first quarter of online learning and just sort of in general as a first-gen college student, what do you wish your professors knew or that your professors would do that would really help you out? What advice could you give us?
I believe that the online platform allows for a different style of teaching. One of my classes had a bunch of pre-recorded lectures that were available to me 10 weeks in advance. Since week 1, you had all of these pre-recorded lectures, and I was able to do it at my own pace. And in 1 week, I didn't have enough time to do something. I was able to do it the week before or the week after. Obviously, everything had a due date, and so I was able to keep up with the content. And at the same time, that class used lecture time, the assigned lecture times, for a live Zoom call, but it was more of like a discussion type lecture in which we would go over certain questions and not necessarily the topics, but more like in depth and a part of the topic. And so I really like that, because I didn't feel like I felt more productive doing it that way, because I was able to obtain the information. If I didn't understand something, I could just rewind and watch that little part again. And then whenever I was actually applying the concepts during lecture times, it kind of stuck more to my brain. I don't know.
Yeah.
And at the same time, if I had a question, I was able to ask during that time. Compared to when it's like an actual live lecture, you don't have the actual question. Like, there's a confusion, but you don't know how to explain or how to
Right.
formulate a sentence. And so I think that's a really good method, at least for me. That's what worked compared to other classes which were just live lectures, and it was harder to comprehend the material. So I feel like that would be something other professors could use.
Okay, cool. That's helpful for me. That'll be something that I keep in mind for my own classes in the spring. So I guess we should probably wrap up fairly soon, but I wanted to take a couple of minutes to just talk about mentorship in general, right? And you pointed towards that when you talked about going to office hours, right? Going to office hours, as you said, is a good opportunity to realize what questions you didn't know you had about the content, but it is also a really important place to meet faculty who can mentor you, right? And we actually know from research that particularly for those of us that are first gen or who identify as members of an underrepresented community, forming relationships with our faculty members can be like the number one thing that determines if we stay in university and if we succeed there, right? So this format is the only way that we can do mentorship right now because we can't meet face to face. But maybe you could just talk a little bit about this process and what has worked for you about this process, what you think we could do differently in the future, so that we can be more useful to you as mentors.
Something that I've really liked is recording the videos as like a self-reflection. Whenever I'm reading the prompt and thinking back on my week at UCI, I'm thinking what I'm doing and how it's affecting my life. And I feel like that has helped me, as well as receiving like your comments and your own experiences and just kind of like hearing from you. And I guess it kind of relates to what I was talking about right now, because I like that it's on my own time and that I don't have to kind of have an assigned time where I have to do it. And so I really enjoyed this process of like videos going back and forth. And I believe it's been a good mentorship program, as well as having these talks when it's like an actual in-person type thing. And I have enjoyed doing this. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. And now, just to end, I want you to think about yourself as now an emerging mentor for incoming first gen students, right? Like you're in the middle of your first year, so it's all still new and you are, like you said, you're adjusting, but in the process, you are already gaining wisdom and experience about how to succeed as a university student from a first gen family, right? So thinking forward to next year's class, next year's first gen incoming first generation students in the fall quarter, what guidance or advice could you give them already about how to be happy and successful as a university student?
I feel like one of the most important things to have is to have a good support system that, regardless of how you're doing in the classes, regardless of whether you get into school you wanted to get in or not, just to have someone you can just truly trust and tell them how you're feeling, and to know that it's okay to fail, that it's not the end of the world, even though it feels like it in the moment. It's gonna get better, and just taking one day at a time, taking breaks and rewarding yourself for your hard work, because your hard work doesn't always look the same as someone else's hard work. So as long as you know you're trying and you're doing the best that you can, that's the best that you can do, and that's all we have. So that is my advice.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Greta. Happy holidays. And I am looking forward to our next conversation.
Happy holidays.